Hey everybody, welcome to Linux Cast. I'm your host Matt.
I'm Drew.
I'm Tyler.
Hey, wait a minute. There's a new guy here. Yeah. So Drew, just real quick, tell us who you are.
I have a YouTube channel, Just a Guy Linux, and I am super happy to be here.
And that's who he is. He's happy to be here. So we have added a third. We are also doing this in a new time slot. So it's like when NBC shuffles around their favorite shows. So they've always put it on Tuesday nights. Well, we're now on Tuesday nights. So if you want to watch us live from now on, Tuesday nights, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, watch us live. If you don't catch us live, we understand that there are time zones, and we just killed all the Europeans. Sorry. You will have to watch the replay of it, which will appear on Saturday afternoons. That'll be an edited version, but you won't miss much, just the pre-show. Everything else will be fine, except there'll be fewer ums on Tyler's end. That's the way it goes. All right. I don't know why.
I love how I'm getting singled out for it.
I know.
I have no track record, therefore I am completely...
I have definitely said ums before. I don't know why Nate thinks it's just you.
I would love it if he cuts that out of the end.
This is the Linux Cast. We talk about Linuxy things, and that's what we're planning on doing tonight. But before we jump into the main topic, because we got a good toasty one for tonight, we're going to go around the horn and talk about what we've done this week in open source or Linux or BSD or whatever have you. So, Tyler, why don't you go ahead and take us off first?
All right. Well, I've been doing a lot, so I got held up in the hospital, but all better now. And right before I went in, I had all of my computer stuff, ready to come inside. I had brought all of it down from Kentucky. So I literally had everything about my workstation, all of that stuff, completely disassembled and where I couldn't use it. And then when I went to the hospital after I got back from surgery, I couldn't, move or lift anything for a while. So it took me an entire week just to get my entire setup set back up. But I did build my own nice custom little keyboard. I've been using the heck out of these things. They're very nice. The fact that they only have 34 keys has been a little bit challenging to get used to. So it's been a slow go. I dropped from 75, 85 words per minute down to 15. So it was a rough go there for a while, but I'm doing much better there. I got a new update to Zany OS, which I posted a video about for the first time forever.
You remembered the password.
Yep. It took a while, but I finally cracked it.
You had to just admit it. You had to reset the password, right?
3 times because it was just so broken. But yeah, I did finally get in. They hadn't even I'm pretty sure I was close to having my channel deleted. I hadn't posted in so long, but it was good.
Wait, do they do that? They don't. They
can't do that.
No. Well, I mean, I'm sure they could, but I don't think they do.
They may very well, because I know for a fact they do it with Gmail addresses. So if there's a Gmail address associated with your YouTube channel, would the YouTube channel also go away?
Well, Tyler's got he's north of 6,000 subscribers. I don't think they're gonna kick him off the platform.
In YouTube metrics, I don't know that YouTube as a platform values 6,000 that much. I don't know. If I didn't post for long enough, I'm sure they'd be like, well, we need some space for the new data center, Markiplier or insert super popular YouTube name here.
Everyone under 5,000 subscribers who hasn't posted in a year gets booted off the platform.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised for YouTube to do some stuff like that.
If they thought there was a good reason, probably.
The only other things of interest is some people have been asking me to talk about me using my MacBook and trying to make Mac, kind of like a tiling window manager experience, like Linux, stuff like that. Have wanted me to make content around that, and just so I don't have to respond to more messages about it, which I'm fine with responding to them, but so you don't have to wait for a response back. I haven't done that because trying to make Mac OS a tiling window manager experience that's not broken or feels janky as hell is impossible. Mac OS is a different beast, and you either like it or you don't, or you're like me, where you're like an oddball that sits right in the middle, where it's like it's okay enough. Like, I haven't wanted to jump off any small or large bridges yet because of Finder, although I should. It's very bad. But yeah, I've literally done nothing of interest to my Mac other than mount an NFS share. That's the only like nerdy thing I've done. I mean, I do have Kitty, like I've customized ZSH and like NVim, but it's what I have already done on Linux before. Like it's nothing different. Like it's literally the same.
Such a lame Mac user.
Well, I mean, like, what else do you have to theme on Mac other than the terminal? And like at that point, I mean, I could make one video about like my Kitty config, but if you've used any of my Linux config files before, you know what my Kitty config looks like. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to.
All right, Drew, what about you? You been doing anything good this week?
I have done absolutely nothing. No, I'm just kidding. I feel very scattered this week, very unfocused. But the short of it is I put a video out today with some corresponding documentation. I replaced my wife's PC with a better, more energy efficient PC, which actually technically is not FOSS. So I'm just putting that out there. And then I actually disassembled a Threadripper PC that was in the other room so that I could upgrade it. And I ordered some RAM, and it's going to be a home lab at some point. I've been using the TrueNAS scale for a while, and I've been trying to add some apps for that work fairly well, but it's kind of hit and miss. Some of these apps don't work particularly well on this TrueNAS scale. And then I don't know if anybody saw, but I put out a bunch of videos in the last month that are 15-year-old window managers, stacking window managers. And I've been writing some bash scripts that incorporate installing those as custom installs into Debian. So getting into bash scripting more and more heavily.
Every time somebody says they're getting into bash scripting, I miss TFL.
Yes. I had someone reach out again here recently about him.
Every once in a while, someone asks, "Do you know what happened to Terminal for Life?" Like, no, I had no clue. I have spent the week filling out my ebook library through various means. And I have discovered a quandary. So there are no good ebook hosting solutions out there. So you can go with Calibre Web, but unfortunately, if it functions where it needs to take all of the files out of the directory that you have your stuff stored in, put it into its own directory format, and then it uses it, right? So you end up with 2 copies of everything, and they're all differently organized. So the Calibre Web was not the thing, because you have to use Calibre to do that, and then you use that Calibre library for the Calibre Web, even though that UI is better. So I ended up on Kavita, and unfortunately, I'm going to end up staying with Kavita, but it's not great. So it's tailored around series. And for whatever reason, the developers are very anti-book. Like it supports ebooks fine, but it assumes everything is a series. So even books that are standalones get treated as series, which is not great. Also, and relatedly, because it treats everything as series, it means that every EPUB has to have series metadata embedded within it. And unfortunately, very few of them actually do. So what I've been doing is every time I want to add an ebook to my library, I have to get into something called Sigil. And Sigil is the biggest piece of crap software you've ever seen. It's a EPUB editing text editor. And it jumps all over the place. If it loses focus, it deletes half the file if you haven't saved it already. It's not great. It works way better in Plasma because it's a Qt application, but it's like Qt4, I think. It's really old. So, anyways, I've been getting in there. Basically, if you've ever edited an EPUB file, it's basically an XML file. And I don't know why you can't just use Vim to edit the XML stuff, but you have to use this thing. And I've done I don't know, probably 500 books, added series data to these things, and it's just it's not been a good experience. But I'm done for now until I get more books, which is unfortunately something that I do pretty much every 3 or 4 days because I'm obsessed with filling out my library. So that's basically what I've been doing. If anyone knows of a good self-hosted ebook platform that I can use besides Calibre Web or Kavita, let me know in the comments or in chat or via email or something like that. I'd really appreciate it. I've been talking to Steve about it, and he uses Kavita, and he finds it perfectly fine because, as far as I know, mostly what he uses it for is like comic books and manga, and all that stuff is in series, and all that stuff has series data with it attached already because the formats there require it, where EPUB doesn't require it. And EPUB also has 4 different formats that you can use, and you got to remember what version of EPUB you're actually using. It's not great. Fix the audio, Matt. What's wrong with the audio?
It's your background noise, like the fan and all that stuff.
Can't help it. If you don't like it, watch the edited version. It'll be gone. It'll be like magic. I can't help it. It's hotter than hell. I'm not turning it off. Although I will say that Discord or OBS should be pulling some of it out, so it has to be better than it otherwise would be. I'm not going to mess around with it.
He was just messing with you.
I do genuinely hope every 20 minutes during this podcast, there's another, like, we have to make another statement. Like, look, it's the heat.
I'm literally melting here, okay? Okay. Anyways, that's basically what I've been doing. Other than that, today I tore my entire office apart. Basically, my desk is an old wooden, like, oak desk, and it weighs like 1,000 pounds. And it has this really obnoxious hutch, or had this obnoxious hutch on the back, and it was impossible to clean. So I had dust bunnies the size of like New York City rats, just rolling around. So what I decided to do, I took everything off the desk, including my computer, and cleaned it. And it looks fantastic. But for the boys here can see the remnants of the disaster of my room. Luckily, you guys can't. But these guys can. Like, this entire office is like crazily messy right now. I got to get it fixed before the end of the night. But anyways, that's the other thing that I've done is just clean stuff. My like in front of me looks fantastic. It's good. I also spent a couple days putting together a couple brand new dressers, and just let me tell you, don't put together dressers. If you have the money, literally hire someone else to do it, because it's so much easier if you have somebody else to do it. It's not a fun process. It took like almost the whole fucking day.
I got a question though about Calibre. So there's 2 things, Calibre and Calibre Web, right? Does one work without the other? Like if Calibre Web, are you required to install Calibre with that?
Yes.
Okay,
but only one time, because Calibre Web requires a Calibre library in order to function.
I see.
And you can, if you want to, use like an example Calibre library that they offer you, but I couldn't get it to work. The only way I could get it to work was actually to have the actual Calibre library file there, and then you have to sync up the paths so the paths are exactly the same, and then it will import the libraries. It's not great, and I don't. My biggest qualm with it was that I have all of my books just basically in a folder, like a directory, and I don't want, like, it really bugs me when software messes with my directories. Like those are mine. I have them organized or not organized the way that I want them to be. And it's like somebody comes into your office or room or whatever and moves something just, willy-nilly. Like, why'd you do that? Don't do that. It's my stuff. Just leave it alone. So, yeah, that really bugged me. But, yeah, you have to have a Calibre library in order for that to work.
Okay.
But I don't think it has to... You don't have to have them both installed at the same time. Just at one point, you have to have the library somewhere. You should try water cooling. Yeah. I think it was Linus Tech Tips water cooled one of his whole rooms or something like that. I don't think that would actually work for human cooling.
I also saw this. I almost forgot. So D-Dub said I should write the book hosting tool, but only have it run on Hyperland on NixOS, like hard code checks for that, and then give it to you. I couldn't think of a more abusive way to treat a friend.
Yeah, Yeah, I still probably wouldn't use it because I don't want one that much. I want to use a real distro, thanks.
Well, I will set out to make the best tool for you possible, but I'll have some dirty, hard-coded checks in there all throughout the code.
It's weird that there's not one, right? Like, all the ones that exist, like there's one called Comga or something like that. That one's meant for comics and manga. There's one called like Liberton or something like that. That one is more for books, but it is open source, but it also requires you to pay them money, which is not something that I'm really interested in doing without trying it first. And it looks like it's been very, very lame development. Like they're not updating it very much. I'm not sure how to the actual name of it. I know it starts with an L, like Liberton or something like that. And then there's one called like Ubiquity, Ubooquit. It's kind of like the routers or whatever. And that one also, I could not get to work, and the UI is like not good. Like it's really not good. So it's weird that there's not a good one. Like basically what I'm looking for is the Plex for ebooks. That's what I really want. And Kavita comes the closest, but for whatever reason they want everything to be series, and that bugs me. Because not everything's a series. Like it's just absolutely not. Most things that I have aren't series. Now, granted, it's becoming. So I'm big into fantasy, and it's becoming increasingly hard to find fantasy novels that aren't series, because they learned from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings that if you make more than one, movie, you're going to get a lot more money. So, yeah. Anyways, that was enough around that. So, the main topic for tonight, everybody, is going to be Linux security. Now, I know this sounds like a very dull topic, but I think it's important, and I want to kind of talk about some of this stuff. So, I have 3 things for us to cover. First, just a general discussion about whether or not we think Linux is more secure than Windows, and why we think that is. And then we'll get more kind of personal on it and talk about what we do for security on our systems, and then the things that we don't do but would like to do in the future. So we'll talk about that. So first, we'll just open this up to the panel, if you will. Do you guys think that inherently, out of the box, Linux is more secure than Windows or Mac? Somebody go.
I think that the answer is yes, but I am hesitant to say that is the answer. Because when I look at it in terms of open source, I think that there are a lot more eyeballs on certain packages than in a closed environment like Windows. Also, we benefit by having a smaller market share compared to Windows. We have a strong community support. And then as far as distributions are concerned, centralized software in this regard is actually a benefit for Linux to be more secure than Windows. But ultimately, I think it's in the hands of the user. Ultimately, I think if the user sucks, then you're going to be you're not going to have a good security.
So basically what you're saying is that if you're dumb enough to click on links in your email, there's nothing we can do for you.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you do have a good point there, because that's kind of the problem with most general users is no matter what the program is, when it asks them for administrator access, they just assume whatever the program is, they probably want it, and it probably needs it for something that they want to do. So, yes. And that's like literally the extent of the thought process and the amount of just in general thought that goes into it. And I don't think an OS can protect you from that.
No.
Well, it can mitigate it though, right? In some form. Like that's the idea behind containers. Like if something is containerized and sandboxed, if you are a moron but you're in a container, at least you don't infect everything. But Tyler, you and I have talked about this before. Containers, especially even on Linux, aren't really as sandboxed as you think that they really are. Like they say they're sandboxed, but the number of Flatpaks that come with access to your home directory out of the box, like free fettered access without ever asking your permission, is astonishing. And some of them like really don't need it, but like even the ones that do need it should still have to ask. And I think that was the direction they wanted to go with Flatpak, but they never got there. And to the point now where it's just like everybody has whatever access they want to, and that really dilutes the ideas behind what a container is supposed to offer, right? And that's like every time we talk about this security thing is like containers are like the thing that like, oh, this is gonna be the savior of morons. But they're not as good as we'd want them to be, right?
Well, I mean, also like to me, like I do think Linux is more secure than Windows or Mac OS, but my take on it is not like, because there's actually somebody in chat who was mentioning like there is a lot of known exploits in Linux. Like that is true. There may even be more than are known in pick Windows or Mac. Like you could say that. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but you could say that. I don't know that that's a good metric to go based off of, because just because there is something exploitable about an OS at the kernel level, most of the time that's going to be like if you have access to the hardware, and like that's not the type of security that most people need out of an OS. For example, most people are not going to encounter a really bad piece of malware or whatever from someone coming to their house and sticking a USB drive into their device or manipulating the BIOS or whatever. Like it's going to be from something they did like on the computer or a service that gets manipulated on the computer. And I think if you're running Linux, typically you're going to have a smaller like surface attack layer, just because your services aren't so egregious in their extent. Now, depending on what desktop environment you're running, the type of distro you're running, all that changes. But I think for the most part, that's a kind of true statement.
More minimal the install, the better you are in terms of security. I mean, if you don't have a lot of packages that just don't need to be there, I mean, I end up wiping the machine and reinstalling every couple months just because I'm a weirdo and want to stay away from any packages or dependencies that just don't need to be there anymore. And not to mention, I think you stay away from package, because we are at the mercy of the package maintainer in some way, shape, or form. If you are installing a bunch of stuff, whether it be Flatpak or even in the AUR, if you're an Arch user, then you are, that's a lot of trust. You're putting a lot of trust in somebody else's hands. And I just don't trust anybody. So.
And it's even more than that, right? That because of the way Linux does packaging, there's not an OBS maintainer, right? Like there's an OBS developer and an OBS maintainer. That's not really where there's the OBS developers, and then there's probably 20 different maintainers of different packages that are out there. Like if you search the AUR for OBS, there's like 12 different packages, right? And that's just one example of like one program, and you have to trust each of those maintainers to have compiled it in a certain way. I mean, we've heard multiple times of different packages in the AUR being compiled with things like miners, like crypto miners, right? And that's happened multiple times. And there was just a couple like a month or so ago, we heard about how in the Snap Store, someone put in a crypto thing that stole someone's like $500,000 or something crazy like that. And because of the way Linux does packages, it makes it really hard to know that you can trust a package, because you're very rarely are you getting a package directly from the person who developed it. Like, very rarely. I mean, and for good reason, because most developers can't say, well, I'm going to create a package for Debian, I'm going to create a package for Nix, I'm going to create a package for OpenSUSE and Fedora and, Red Hat. That's like 12 different packages you probably have to maintain. They all have to be exactly the same. You have to package them and update them all at the same time, and it's something that any developer really wants to do. A lot of them, some of them do it, but a lot of them don't want to do. And again, it all comes back to the promise that was containers, because the great thing supposedly about Flatpaks and snaps was that the developer can go put up a snap or a Flatpak, and that's just one thing that they have to, do. And yes, I know I'm not looking at the right camera. Unfortunately, I have two cameras going. I'm looking at the wrong camera. I'm sorry about that. I'll figure that out eventually. But I think that makes security way harder, because, like Drew said, you can't trust people you don't know, and it becomes a lot harder to trust when there are multiple. Like if it was just like. If there was just one distro, say we're all on Debian, and Drew was a happy man, we're all on Debian. Nix didn't exist because it's not a real distro. OpenSUSE died in the 90s or whatever because Yast exploded or whatever the reason is. Just Debian exists, and there's just one repository, and everybody puts their efforts into that one repository. Then it would be a little bit easier to trust, because it's just that one repository, and it would be much more easier to check because everyone's focus would be on that. Whereas now the way everything is that everyone's focus is focused on their own repositories and their own packaging system, ecosystem, and it just doesn't really work in terms of security, because the whole idea behind open source, right, is that if you want to, because it's open source, you can go do the code. But I mean, nobody really does that. I mean, nobody. Either you do know how to do it and you would know what you're doing, but you still don't do it, or you don't know how to do it because you don't know how to code, and therefore you just have to kind of put blind trust that something is working. And the promise of open source is never really fulfilled because of the general ignorance of programming that kind of just exists. Also, laziness. Because let's admit it. So let's raise our hands. How many of you, when you've downloaded a ISO, has actually checked the checksum?
I think I did that once, man. Maybe once or twice.
I've tried it before.
Just to learn
I
how,
don't even
maybe.
know if I did it.
Yeah.
Right? So, like in the chat, if you actually check the checksum of your ISOs, let us know, because I bet you it's very few of you. And that's something that you're supposed to do, right? To make sure that you're getting the ISO from the people who are actually trusted. And very few people actually do it. And that's one area where we could say, like, this thing is secure because, the checksums match or whatever it is, right? And still people don't do it. And it's just... So it's... Some things, like... on one side, security is hard, but also... people are lazy and stupid.
Well, I mean, so
that's totally true.
To elaborate off of that, someone commented, and like I really like this. I agree a lot with this comment. Current days of attack are most commonly used with social attacks anyway. Brute force attacks are less common. It happens, but not as much as people would like to believe. I think that's a pretty dang true statement. Like, I really, truly think brute force attacks happen, but they're very rare, especially on an individual user basis. It is much more likely that you're going to end up having a problem simply because you were interacting socially with someone online and made a dumb decision like that. And like, also, like, I don't think it's really hard to be like, it's really hard not to be like a semantic Nazi when you're talking about stuff like this, because you kind of have to be like, yeah, it's a dumb thing, but it's hard not to turn people off when you go, yeah, people are stupid and make mistakes. Like, a lot of people don't like to be told that, but like, doesn't matter how smart you might be, like, we've all done dumb stuff. Like like, you do that, and that's normally nowadays how you're going to get caught with security problems. Like, just in reality. One account you messed up with, you made a bad choice, bam.
Laszlo in the chat, I didn't mean to say that you in particular were stupid. I meant everyone was stupid, and I included the three of us in that everyone as well. Okay, general stupidity in humanity is just an absolute fact. We're all included in it into various forms. Even Einstein, had his flaws. Okay, that's just it's just the way that it is. So don't take offense. And it's not by far. It's not the first time I've called everyone stupid. It's just. It's one of my quirks.
Well, I mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I think it would be very disingenuous if any of us sat here and went so the entire time I've lived, I've never once done something I shouldn't have online.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Just to go off from that. So the stupidest thing I've ever done from a security standpoint, or at least the stupidest thing I know that I've done, is when I first started uploading my .dot files onto GitHub. So I decided that I was just going to be lazy about it. I wasn't going to upload individual files. No. I was just going to do the entire .config file, everything. Pro tip: don't do that.
Don't ever do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. So
I don't know, Matt, that you could actually say pro tip in this specific instance.
Learn from my mistake. Don't do that, because there's stuff in there that is not. Bitwarden, as secure as Bitwarden is, when you're hosting it on your computer as its app, stores stuff not in hash. Okay? You can very easily take that file that Bitwarden stores, put it in another Bitwarden app, and it'll actually see your file. And if they happen to even come close to your password, they can get to it. So don't do that. And another thing, especially on GitHub, it is, especially if you're new to GitHub, it's really hard to get something offline once it's up there. It's very hard once you I don't have kids, thank the Lord. There's no little bastards of mine running around because they'd all be just as dumb as me, I'm sure. But also, I'd be scared to death because kids these days have access to phones from very young ages, right? And as a parent, really, Drew is the only one here who can actually speak to this because he's actually the only parent here. But I can only imagine you have to teach your children, don't upload stupid shit online, because eventually you're going to want to get a job, okay? And if you have dumb, pictures of you smoking pot or doing coke or whatever on Facebook, it's going to be a lot harder to get a job. But it's more than that. The more stuff you put online, that stuff just never comes down. And just to bring it back to security, right? If you upload something that you weren't supposed to GitHub, just for an example, like I did, it's really hard to. That's interesting. There's now two.
I know. Something just kicked me off.
Weird. Maybe I should boot one of these. Do you think? I don't know, but it's really hard to, get that stuff. There it goes. All right.
There you go. Thanks.
Weird.
I couldn't do it myself, Matt. You were the only moderator that could actually provide.
I should have just used regular Jitsi, but I had the link for this one.
That's cool.
And then, it's just really hard to get stuff online. So, I get stuff offline, and I think that's a lesson that a lot of people just learn the hard way, and it's one of the reasons why, I tend to make, I did earlier in this episode, I made fun of people who click on links in emails, but it's so easy to do. And yeah, I know we're completely out of order now. You guys are just going to have to deal with it.
I feel very Tylerish right now. I'm sorry.
Same, dude. I didn't know I was a Drew until now, but I'm liking it.
I'm feeling it too. I'm feeling it.
No, Matt's going to have to change the names around. That's great. We'll get this down. It's the first time. It's all right. But anyway, so let's move on to the second part of the question. So, what do you guys do to secure your setups as is right now? Do you do anything special? Do you use a firewall? Do you have a AdGuard or Pi-hole set up? What do you guys do? Drew, why don't you go first? Is there anything special you do right now to ensure yours and your family's security?
I feel very unprepared for this because I don't know that I do a whole lot. Honestly, in fact, I think I roll the dice way too much. And we'll get to, problems that I foresee down the road here. But yeah, I don't really do anything. I mean, my computer is really the only one that is kind of open to the internet at all. My wife's is not. And so I kind of keep, I kind of keep, like I said before, the minimal amount of files on my machine and packages on my Debian machine. And then I wipe it periodically just so that I don't have a lot of dependencies or anything like that. In fact, I don't even use an entire desktop environment. I just have the window manager, and that is all. Although I do have, like I said, I was telling Tyler, I have a NAS that is running apps that is open to the internet, as well as Plex and Nextcloud on a different server altogether. So yeah, I probably need to do more in terms of security on those particular things. I will say this, I was kind of hoping we would actually talk a little bit about, do we feel more secure being in a community-driven distro or a corporate-driven distro? Because Matt, from your perspective, you're using OpenSUSE, where it's backed by a corporation, and then I'm using Debian, and I wanted to kind of see if that was something that you wanted to talk about at all.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I don't know, because I don't know. It goes back to the trust thing, like you were talking about earlier, right? I don't know that you can necessarily place more trust in one or the other, because I mean, there's still a lot of anonymity there. I think that in some ways it's kind of like six of one, half dozen of the other, because on one hand, on the corporate side, they have to follow a lot of privacy laws, and they have to do a lot of checks and stuff to make sure that their stuff is compliant with a lot of that stuff. And there's obviously a lot of resources there that they can use to secure things, right? On the other hand, they're a corporation. They're obviously there to make money, and they have different priorities because of that something like Debian doesn't necessarily have to do, because Debian doesn't have to make any money. They just have to pay the developers what they are, and it's a nonprofit organization or whatever it is, and they can go about their business. So I think from a security standpoint, I wouldn't say that I feel excuse me. I don't feel any more or less secure because of the corporate backing that SUSE provides. I do have a healthy dose of paranoia regarding SUSE, simply because they're a corporation, right? And that's not something that I would experience if I were, say, on Debian, because Debian's not an actual corporation. I would also say, like Tyler uses Nix, and Nix is a corporate-backed distribution. The vast majority of the funding for Nix comes from a corporation. It's not as big of a corporation as SUSE is. Like, I don't think so. But
no, I don't.
But it's in a similar situation. Also, it feels like, and Tyler, you correct me wrong because you're the Nix user here, but it feels like Nix is in a constant state of development, and it's even though it's been around for a very long time, it still feels like Nix is early days, even though it's well developed. It's just not necessarily. It's hard to feel. So it'd be interesting to see, Tyler, what do you think? Do you feel like you have more security because you have a corporation standing behind your shoulder, looking over everything that you do, very creepily?
Well, I mean, to be clear, like I haven't really researched a lot into the company aspect of NixOS or all I know is if NixOS is community backed or company backed, the focus on community keeps it from appearing like just another corporate distro. Like it doesn't feel like a corporate distro. But I don't think at all a corporate backing matters much for security. Support is where it matters. To me, I don't think you're going to have a better developed experience if it's a company behind it. I think people have weird. I think the terms between community and company really confuse and make things weird when you're talking about stuff, because a company at the end of the day is literally the same thing as a community of people, except they have rules and most of the time get paid or should get paid.
I think in terms of if as a user, I don't really have a preference, but if I am a business owner and I'm looking to use a Linux distribution as my operating system for my business, I think that I would lean more towards a corporate backed distro, because I want to go to somebody and say, you screwed up. You're to blame for my problems. And
well, I mean, even if you're, I'm sorry to cut you off, but if you're not doing that, like telling, like being able to go to that person and tell them, hey, I have a problem and I know it's your job to fix it now, makes things like, I mean, especially if you're running a company yourself and you thought about it for half a minute, would you rather pay someone to do that full time or have someone else that you're paying a low fee for a year to have them do it? Like, that sounds way better.
Also, there's the idea that if your distro is community run, you have as a developer, your duty is to a general sense of community. So if some random person comes up to you and says, "Hey, fix this one problem," you don't really have to do it, because unless it affects a lot of people in the community, whatever. Whereas if you are a company who buys support for, say, Red Hat or whatever, and you have a problem, they have a financial reason to help you because you give them money. Whereas Debian, even if you donate to the Debian, foundation or whatever Debian is, I'm not sure what they're actually registered as, but if you give money to Debian, they're not financially obligated to do anything just because you handed them some cash. Just like if somebody gives me, $5 on YouTube, I'm very grateful that you gave me $5, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to review your distribution. I mean, I may, but it doesn't mean that I will. Because I don't actually have that financial, responsibility. Whereas, like Red Hat or SUSE or Canonical, if you pay them for support and you have a problem, they're financially, they have a duty financially to actually solve your problem. So
I think the pay scale, Matt, for a distro, a review is $10 though, just so you know.
Yeah, of course.
It depends. No. It highly depends on what distro it is. So if someone comes up, Matt, will you review Linux from scratch? That price is high. That's very, very high. And someone asked me to review NixOS. Like I'm in the process of a NixOS review. It will eventually happen. I promise. It's like partially recorded already. So the next thing will come. But anyways, so Drew, you say you don't do any. Go ahead, Tyler.
Sorry. Someone posted an interesting comment. They said Proxmox is an example of perfect licensing. You can use the community like repository or pay and get the enterprise repository. And things like that in the open source community are a really, really good option. But to me, if we're talking about a security focused conversation, I don't think it matters from a security standpoint which one you're going to go with, because both of them, if we're being honest, if you're operating as a company and you're looking at all of the attack vectors where you can get hit from, most of the distros are going to be pretty much the same. They're going to use, maybe slightly different versions of the same packages, maybe, and then especially assuming you've got the same use case for all of these, you're going to choose something that's got about the same packages, about the same versions. They're using about the same kernel. It's you're really not changing your security attack vector at all.
Companies don't distro hop. Okay.
Yeah.
Companies do not distro hop. They've chosen their distro, whatever distro they've chosen. If they're going to use Linux, that's what they're using forever and ever. That's one of the reasons why when Red Hat killed CentOS everyone freaked out because they were going to have to change to something different, right? Because they were going to have to stay on stream, which was going to basically become a rolling release, which companies aren't going to run a rolling release. That's just not what they're going to want to do. They want to be 100% in control of their update cycle, when they update, how often they update, what those updates are. They want to know exactly what's going to be coming in on the system. That's how they control their security. And when CentOS died and went to CentOS Stream, that's why people freaked out, because they were basically going to have to distro hop. And as stressful as a distro hop can be for you or me, it would be much harder for a company who has thousands of computers, has to worry about servers and stuff like that, and just so much more, right? So the whole idea from a corporation standpoint, like if you're a corporate customer, your idea of security has to be completely different, because you have to manage so many different people. And when it comes to managing Linux, you have to be very in control of that at all times. Like, you have to know precisely when you're going to get an update, when you're going to apply those updates, and how you're going to do it, right? And that's going to all play into how secure you are from just a Linux perspective. There's obviously way more that goes into it, like teaching your employees not to click on links in emails, which is something that all companies should actually just never click on a link in an email. Just never do it. Like that solves the problem, but there's those things, and then there's the actual technology secure that you have to deal with. So I think that just to kind of bring it back to our conversation here, for me personally, in terms of what I do for security, it all changed when I decided I was going to do a home lab. Now, I know I'm the home lab nerd now, but I think that I knew absolutely nothing about networking. I thought I knew some stuff about networking. I realized I don't know shit about networking. And when you decide you're going to start opening up ports, when you're going to start to learn about Nginx and Tailscale and all this stuff, you realize how little you actually know. And I know I'm continually freaked out now that I have things exposed to the internet that's going to eventually cause me problems from a security standpoint, because I don't know enough to know that I don't know. I know enough that I don't know stuff, but I don't know what I need to know yet to know those things, right? If that makes sense, right? And I don't know where to go to learn the things that I don't know, because I don't know what I need to know.
Yes.
So it's just, that was by far when we started talking about home labs on the log a couple months ago. Drew, you were there. I was talking about getting a mini PC. I was going to add some hard drives. It was going to be a very simple thing. And that has exploded into actually having like a workstation server that sits behind me. It's always on. It has Proxmox on it. Thank you, Tyler, for that. And it has VMs on it, and it's running a whole bunch of Docker containers. Some of those Docker containers are exposed to the internet through Nginx, and it freaks me out because I don't know how secure that actually is yet, and I'm worried about it. And I think that another thing that I'm very worried about is, like, I got myself a managed switch. I don't know how to use it. I have hopes and dreams of learning how to create like virtual networks so that I can segment things out so that just that stuff there is exposed to the internet, has its own IP address and whatever. But I don't know how to do any of that stuff yet, and it worries me. So in terms of what I do now, I have a firewall on my main computer. I have a firewall on the VMs that I run, and that's about it so far. But I have dreams of doing other things. So, Tyler, do you do anything special on your end in terms of security? And then we can kind of branch out into stuff that we know we need to do in the future.
Well, I'm actually kind of where you are. I know enough to know that I don't know enough to actually be like confident in my security. However, I am setting up virtual networks so devices are not, like, I do not have it set up right now. I'm literally in the process. Again, haven't even been able to move around my computers the entire week, so it's been kind of rough. But I'm setting up the virtual networks. I've got a switch that comes. It should have been here today, so I think it'll be here tomorrow. But I've been researching all of that stuff. I will say, To be honest, if you have a firewall set up either on your router level or on your actual devices that are hooked up to the internet, and you're not going to risky sites and, not opening up phishing emails, you're doing better than most people. I do know that. Most people do not have a firewall and also are very willy-nilly with their email. Like, very willy-nilly. So, to be honest, like, it's one of those things where it's very easy, especially when you start getting into it and learning how, like, because I mean, you know this, Matt. Like, there's a rabbit hole with like security and networking that you can go down that is super deep. That being said, it's really easy to start going down that rabbit hole, stop because, it's a lot, and then be in this like permanent state of like fear, like that you're, gonna get hacked or whatever. But to be honest, with a basic level of knowledge of networking and firewalls, you're probably doing better than most people, and you shouldn't, like, there shouldn't be an existential threat over your
Well,
head.
I also have the fear of going down that rabbit hole, doing a whole bunch of complicated stuff and learning stuff about it, and then actually making the situation worse because I've made a mistake, right? And it's very... I make mistakes all the time. And it's not as if it would be a huge deal, because I have all the private stuff that I need, behind passwords and as secure and encrypted as I can. But I mean, it would be a pain, and maybe there's something private that I don't want out there that I've missed to that could get out there, and it would be embarrassing or financially horrible or whatever. So I know the problem is it's much easier to go through life in ignorance and not know the danger that you're in than know a little bit, just enough to know that if someone gets in, you're screwed, but you don't know how to fix it. And I think that's where I know that I need to be more secure in terms of my networking and my Linux distros and all that stuff, right? But I'm not at the point now where I know how to do it yet. And the little bit of research that I've done has made me realize how little I actually know. Like, you guys know who Techno Tim is? He's a YouTuber, right?
Yeah.
He does these every once in a while. He'll take a tour of his networking and his home lab and stuff. Like I don't aspire to be him. Like I have no interest whatsoever in having 12 different virtual networks, all of these access points all over the place, and all the rules and stuff that go into creating all those firewalls and stuff. I don't want to be that guy. Like, I'd love to have a subscriber count. I don't actually want his home lab, because that would freak me out, because there's so... It worries me, because the more complex your home lab is, the more complex your computing systems are, the more it feels like you're vulnerable. If you just have a regular laptop, you don't have to worry about too much about it, because that's the only thing you have to secure. But when you're talking about all of your family's computers, your home lab, all the VMs that you run, you got to do all these things that what happens if you make a mistake. So just to kind of wrap us up here, let's go around a little bit and talk about the things that we know as of right now we need to do better on, and maybe an idea of how we're going to do that in the future. So, Drew, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of identified it as far as you've got all these things, and there's a problem with being a tinkerer. I mean, I think we all kind of recognize that there's a problem with tinkering, especially when you're in the beginning stages of tinkering with something like a home lab, because just enough to be freaking dangerous. You get to the point where you're dealing with something very simple, like having a Nextcloud instance, but at the same time, you really want to make that. There's password security, obviously, but there's more than just that, So I think I'm in the same ballpark with you guys. I need to know more. But I think we are also in this percentage of people, and I don't think it's a very big percent of people that kind of have an idea as to where we want to go, even as a tinkerer, but there's a whole just slew of people that are much less secure than we are. And so I feel good about, I mean, I don't feel good that these people are really, they have terrible passwords and so on and so forth, but I think we know enough to be dangerous that we are not in that like safe category at all. But to your point, Matt, if you're looking at Techno Tim and you've got that kind of cash, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars to run your home lab, good luck to you. But when we're on a budget like most of us are, you just want your small piece to be secure and not a danger to you, or especially anything related to, files that are, that financial files and stuff like that you want to keep as secure as possible. I mean, I don't have anything even on my NAS that's, that would make me, that I don't want leaked. I guess that's the best way to look at it,
Well, that's the best way to live your life. Keep the files that you're going to store where if they were to get leaked, they aren't a problem.
Yeah.
It's like my example of what I need to get done for me here at the network is setting up the virtual private networks so that I can actually, keep devices that need to be connected over the local network connected, but have them not able to access the internet on their own little segmented version of the network. Things like security cameras at the house. So that way, I want to be able to view them from any computer here on the local network, but I don't want that there's no reason I should be viewing my security cameras from somewhere else. I get it's super convenient to be away from home, check the, backdoor camera, see the dogs out in the backyard, whatever, check in on people dropping packages, but that's something that it's convenient, but the ways in which that can be used either against you or just exploited it's not a good idea.
There's a stream out there somewhere of Tyler walking around in his undies, just streaming 24/7. I'm sure that happened.
I'm positive. I know there was one time where I was in a Discord call and completely forgot my camera was on and everything, and I got up and fell asleep. I literally just got up and passed out on the bed, and I woke up the next morning seeing that Discord was still on and my camera was on. I was like, oh, nice.
I'm actually sure that's happened more than once. I'm pretty sure.
Probably.
So Nate has the best security advice ever. Basically, he's just telling us to become Luke Smith, but he says, burn everything, run to the mountains, and be caveman. And that's it. That is the best advice. If you want to be secure, unplug your Ethernet cable and don't connect yourself to the internet. I kind of touched on it as well. Things that I know I need to do. I think that my next step is I have a Zima board. It's just a little single board computer. It has a double NIC on it, and what I think I'm going to do is learn how to use pfSense or OpenSense or something like that, and actually have a physical firewall that can sit on my network and control everything. And that has enough power that it can run in a VM if I wanted to, or if I wanted to also run Pi-hole or AdSense, AdGuard, or along with it, I could do that on the same computer, and it would work fine. So I think that's my next task for in terms of that. My problem is I don't know how to do it yet. So and it shouldn't be a problem. I learned how to use Proxmox through tutorials and stuff like that. Like Tyler, you were gonna walk me through Proxmox, and then I messed that all up because of the way things were set up. So I learned on my own, and it worked fine. And I probably did a better job. Not a better job. It was probably better for me to learn on my own because I knew, basically now I know if something breaks, I can go fix it, right? And that was
well,
good.
I will say one thing. I knew things were going well because you told me. I'll message you when I go again, so you can or when I start again to get some help. You never messaged me, and I knew things were going well.
I think I even sent you a screenshot. I was like, look at this. It was like a little bit of Nana.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did.
And Nana Boo Boo. Look what I did on my own. I don't need you, Tyler. That's horrible. Anyways, my problem with the networking stuff is that there's so much. And where do you go to find the tutorials to learn the stuff that you need to know? And I don't know the answer to that question. Like, I could go, YouTube search it and find random people. And, you're going to find the Techno Tims and the guy has Owl in his name. I don't remember what his whole name.
Raid Owl.
Raid Owl? Yeah, that guy. And there's a couple of other ones, like Network Chuck is going to be on there, right? Those things. But there are several things that can go wrong there. One, they all do things differently. Also, they all have setups that are way grander than I'm ever going to hopefully have, like unless I win the lottery. So they're going to be doing things that are way more complicated than what I need to do. But also, a lot of that stuff is 5 or 6 years old. And one of the things that I ran in trying to set up Portainer, a lot of the Portainer tutorials are 3 or 4 years old, and they've changed a lot of stuff in the Portainer UI since those videos came out, and I'm worried a little bit about that too. So the bottom line is that I'm just very worried about things these days, and it's just, I mean, I'm secure enough to know that I'm not going to immediately get hacked, I hope, but I'm also thinking about it constantly, I guess. So is there anything else you guys want to say in regards to the main topic?
Just make sure you keep your the devices that shouldn't be on the internet, keep them disconnected from the internet. If you have a device that keeps really secure documents on it, like your tax stuff, that device should never go on the internet. There's just no reason for it ever to be there.
That's a good piece of advice. And in fact, we'll go around, we'll all offer one piece of advice. My piece of advice is, for the love of God, use a complicated password and use a password manager. If you do nothing else to security, you don't use a firewall, you don't do any of the nonsense we just talked about, use a package. Use a password manager. Generate long, complicated passwords for every service. Make sure they're all unique. If you can, use a unique username or email or whatever for every service, especially the important ones that you actually care about, like your banking and your healthcare stuff. As much as possible, be as secure as you can on those things, and a password manager will oftentimes do all that stuff for you. The people I talk to who don't use a password manager of some kind boggle my mind.
Also, I don't know if you have, if you're the people you're thinking of are like this as well, but the people who don't typically use password managers have passwords like their first name and date of birth after it. What?
I have been.
You mean Drew12345 is not a good password? Is that what you're trying to say?
We all know what Drew's passwords are
now. I feel very exposed right now.
It's bad. Don't do that.
I will freely admit that I have some services out there that have easy to guess passwords. But there's services I don't care about. I don't know, like Flickr or something like that. I have a Flickr account. There's nothing on it. If it gets hacked, I wouldn't care. But things like, the IRS password that I have, or the tax filing, those things are secured as much as I can. And I think that it's easy enough these days to have a password manager that, works. Also, just because I want to give a second piece of advice, don't use your browser's password manager. Just
oh my god!
Don't do that. Use a third party. I don't care what it is. You can use ClassPass, 1Password, Bitwarden. I don't care. Use Bitwarden because it's open source, or KeePassXC if you want to do the open source stuff. Whatever. Just don't use your built-in. Even if it's Firefox.
No, well, I actually just switched from Firefox to Brave because I saw a lot of different metrics on how bad it compared to Brave. Firefox is definitely not the most secure browser, and the idea that you're going to let Firefox save all of your passwords is that's nuts.
Well, like
Don't do
any
that.
of them. Like there's none of them that I would trust to say, here, have all of my passwords. And it's not even because I'm worried about the browser getting hacked. It's more I'm worried about the fact that every once in a while a browser will get corrupted by an update, and then what happens to all of your passwords? Because you don't have in order to have access to your passwords, you have to have access to the browser. And if the browser is broken, what are you going to do? So have some separate. Use the Unix philosophy in this case. Have a separated password manager is way better. Drew, do you have one final tip that you can give people?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a tip, but I mean, I think that we're in a different category than a lot of other people, but we all have loved ones or friends or that don't fall into the same category that we do, maybe as far as cybersecurity best practices. So I think it's up to us sometimes to educate people. That's my tip is to educate people, giving them the necessary awareness. Because there's a lot of people out there that are completely oblivious to the basic principles of being safe online, such as, identifying phishing attempts, recognizing malicious links in your email, or just understanding software updates and making sure that you're updating your software, especially the security updates for your, for whatever operating system that you're currently using.
If you're the IT person for like your parents or your family or whatever, just educate them as much as you can. Get them on a password manager, teach them how to use it, tell them why it's important to use individual, unique passwords for different services. And yeah, especially the older generation, they'll complain. Like I had to teach my mom how to do it. She's in her almost 80 years old, and she learned how to do it just fine. Now she knows how to use LastPass. She uses LastPass. Would I prefer her to be on Bitwarden? Sure, but LastPass had an easier UI for her to learn, and it works. Now my dad does not use a password manager, but he doesn't sign into anything. Like he refuses to sign into anything. In fact, his computer, for whatever reason, Ubuntu requires, if you're going to use Chrome, it requires you to have a password. So he bitched and complained about that forever. So his password is just DAD, so he can remember it. But he doesn't sign in to anything. Like he doesn't have a Google account. He does have a Yahoo account or whatever. All he uses that for is to send pictures for jigsaw puzzles back and forth between me and my mom. So that's all he uses for. So I'm not so worried about his security because he doesn't do anything on the computer other than jigsaw puzzles and solitaire. So
a quick story. My mother is 87 and she gets calls occasionally that say, there's something wrong. You have been hacked. Your computer has been hacked and I would like to help you with that. I don't have a computer. Click. And she never will. I'm just saying. And she never will.
Well, because my grandfather, the only thing he uses is an iPad. And so I had to teach him that, no, because he got, like one of those phishing emails where it tells you, you've got a virus installed. And I had to teach him that, no, you cannot get a Windows virus on your iPad. There's no way that can happen. He was like, oh, okay, I was just worried. He was like, I didn't know. I was just worried. I'm like, no, it cannot happen. It's not a thing. Don't respond to it. It's a phishing email.
When my mom first got on the internet, now this was years and years ago, but for the longest time, we just had dial-up or whatever, so we just had one desktop computer. But eventually, we got her a laptop, and it took her ages to even open the thing out of this box. But when she did and got onto Yahoo Answers, she was very, very happy to be on the internet. So she signed up herself for an email account, and she kept getting these emails saying, "Congratulations, you've won a $500 gift card to Target, or you've won a laptop." And she would come to me and say, "Matt, I won a $500 gift card." And I'm like, "Mom, that's a scam." And she would get so mad at me because she thought I was cheating her out of this money that she won. Now, eventually, it didn't take her like a week or whatever. She realized that she couldn't possibly have won 12 different gift cards from all these places. So she learned very fast that those were scams. But the first couple times when she came to me and said, "Matt, I won these things. How do I claim them?" And I said, you can't. She was very mad at me. So now we laugh at that story because she still gets all these things because she's not at all careful with who she gives her email to. Like most people sign up for stuff willy nilly, and she's exactly the same. So she's always getting these stuff. And now she just like laughs. Like now, the first you guys, I mean, everyone's gotten one of these emails where it's from the FBI or whatever, and your identity's been stolen or something like that. One of my friends got contacted saying that he had that the scammer or whatever had nude pictures of him. Could you please give me your password? Something like some of the stuff is just like so completely out there.
My grandfather got that one, and the funny thing is he doesn't even like having his picture taken. So like he was like almost in tears laughing. He's like, they've got me naked. Sure, okay.
If I got that, I was like, oh, poor people. Like why are you looking around and like look at that shit? All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the Nuggies of the week. So this is the section where we talk about our tips, tricks, picks, whatever you want to call them. But because I was blackmailed by people who consider themselves my friends to use a word that I absolutely despise, we call them Nuggies of the week, and that's what we're going to do. So Drew, you're the new guy, so why don't you tell us what your Nuggie of the week is?
I did a video on Genie and put it out today, and that is my Nuggie of the week because it is really old software, even though it is being developed still. Like they came up with a version 2.0 fairly recently. But if you have not used Genie maybe in a while, or if you are looking for a GTK or a graphical text editor, it's awesome. It really is. It's something that I continue to look at, explore, adding plugins and so on. It's really fantastic. And if you haven't given it a shot, and sometimes it's like, oh, I haven't tried it in a few years, give it a shot if you are in need of a graphical text editor.
So I followed that tutorial you sent me, and it's really good. Yeah, and I definitely did not click on the email and get hacked. That's not the reason why the internet went down for that little bit of time. More likely, someone pulled the plug on it for a little while because I was telling stories. Anyways, Tyler, your Nuggie of the week.
Mine is EXA, or EZA, excuse me, EZA. They've got, so I switched over from using LS Deluxe or LSD, and I mainly did it just because D-Dub showed me that it has an incredible option, not only to sort folders first, so it's kind of like pretty much every file manager out there. That's really nice. But also grid, where it will use all of the horizontal space you have available, and like that automatically gives it the like header at the top. Very nice. It looks very, very nice. I could not recommend it enough. Go ahead and, alias LS to EZA. And then for me, I did so my common aliases are LS, LL, and LA for, list and all. And then I used to have LAL, but the way I've got it now, the list is for list all as well. I pretty much always want list all to be, well, in a proper list format. And both of the list all and list format both have grid now. So it just looks better. Like it really does. Like LSD still looks good. If you've ever used these LS alternatives for Linux, they all look good, but EZA has a lot of flags for functionality that is kind of nice, and I did have a lot of fun messing with D-Dubs, kind of like I was very impressed throughout everything that he was showing me with the EZA, and I kind of kept messing with him that I wasn't going to actually use it. It might not be as good as he says. I had a lot of fun with that.
Did you use EXA when you were on Xorg? Because EZA is a Wayland only thing, and EXA is like the Xorg
I didn't know that there was a difference, like one's for Wayland, one's not. Since they're both terminal programs, I didn't know that was a thing.
So
but
I might be wrong, but I think that EXA is in maintenance mode or been officially abandoned by the developer, and EZA, whatever one Tyler's talking about, is like the continuation of it. It may be Wayland only, but I'm pretty sure it was forked from the original, and it's the one that's being maintained. But I could be completely wrong on that. I just vaguely remember seeing something on the page about that. So, yeah, they're saying EZA is the fork. Okay, so I'm changing mine. I can't. I was originally going to recommend Kavita, but I can't, in good conscience, recommend it just because it's okay, but it's not great. If you do ebooks, it's probably about the best you're going to get, but I'm not going to put too much recommendation behind it. Instead, what I'm going to recommend is Apostrophe. Now, just because I can, and I blame Drew for this 100%. We were talking the other day when I asked you to be on the podcast as a third host. We were talking about Markdown editors. So I've been doing a tour of Markdown editors for the last few days. I've installed Ghostwriter when I was on KDE because it's the official KDE Markdown thing, and it's actually pretty good. And then I've been using Apostrophe now for a couple days again, and it is a very nice little Markdown editor. I will say it does this really stupid thing where it does not recognize that contractions are a thing. Like it tells you that you're spelling contractions wrong. So if you do I''VE, it underlines the VE part because that's not a real word. It's really weird, but it's very well designed, and if you're into Markdown at all, I like that a lot. Eventually, I will get into Genie a little bit more. I have it all customized. I just haven't, actually started using it. So, anyways, so those are the Nuggies of the week, and that's the podcast. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do so in any number of ways. The best way is to head on over to the website, which actually has been updated recently. All of the podcasts that we've done up until now are there. That you can go there and find all of them, which is great. You can also find blog posts, which I've done. But more importantly, you can find all the contact information that you could possibly want to contact the three of us if you want to find that stuff. So that's the linuxcast.com. Excuse me. That's the linuxcast.org. .com will also get you there if you want to go there, because I own both domains. It's awesome. Mr. Moneybags. And anyways, you can go there, find the contact information. You can email us, email at thelinuxcast.org. Tyler has a YouTube channel, which he actually has signed into and posted a video. He's at youtube.com/ZanyOG. Mr. Drew over there, he's Just a Guy Linux on YouTube, so youtube.com/JustAGuyLinux. Those links will all be in the video description and in the podcast description if you're on a podcast listening to the audio version. If you are on a podcatcher right now and you want to leave us a review, we'd really appreciate it, especially if you're on Apple reviews. And even if you're not on Apple Podcasts, head on over there, leave us a review. It really helped the channel, help the podcast. We really appreciate it. And if you want to find all of our contact information, including Discord links, Matrix links, things to the Patreon website or whatever, you can head on over to the linuxcast.org/contact. That's where all of that stuff is, and that's where you'll be able to find all of the good stuff. So that's it for this one. We record this live every Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do some really good topics coming up, so make sure you head on over and subscribe to Linuxcast and catch us live. If you can't catch us live, we do plan on posting the edited version on Saturday afternoons. So you can catch all of our conversations there after the fact. If you don't want to watch us live, you can also listen to the audio version, which will also be posted on Saturdays. So that's it for us this time. We'll see you next time. Both the boys said bye. For the audio things, they both said bye.
Goodbye.